Hey folks, how are we doing? Now, I'm going to check and make sure we're actually live using alternative devices. Turn the volume down here. And let's see if we're actually live. And I guess I am live somewhere. I guess I am live somewhere. So, how is everybody today? Are we all doing good? I hope we are. And thanks for joining me. So, I suppose we're going to talk about belonging and what that means, what it is, what it clearly isn't, and how that fits into the framework. So, my entire life, the last 10, 12, well, not my entire life, I guess, the last 10, 12, 15 years, I have been in a process of questioning reality, I guess you could say. It started from a spiritual awakening. I went through the spirituality gate. You know, I got like tarot cards beside me here, decks of them. Um, I went through um, that model of belief because it offers, and it's great. Don't get me wrong. It offers a brilliant sort of beginner level version of getting control, of figuring out how to be in the world, of understanding, beginning to understand your own power in your own life. It's a beginner framework, but spirituality gets caught up in a lot of the societal beliefs. It gets caught up in trauma. It gets caught up in how things should be. It gets stuck in a lot of stuff. It just does. So the spiritual ideals, the spiritual truths that are available to you through Lao Tzu, through the Tao Te Ching, through texts like that, get lost. And the reason they get lost is because of all of the layering of how life should be, because of things that I call like human roles, morality, right and wrong, good and bad. They're human roles. They're human ideas of how things are supposed to work. They aren't actually true, but they're ideas. So that's where I started. And through that questioning and through those conversations that I was having with myself, through and my tarot cards, trying to understand how things go, how this is supposed to be, what's actually happening, I came upon self mastery first. And at the beginning, it was spiritual self mastery. It was very much um, based in kind of the spiritual realm of like, it had the spiritual framework to it. But self mastery was mastering yourself in the experience without manipulating, changing, or controlling the experience. So it really was sort of a mind, emotion, and behavior type model that allowed me to begin, was a great framework for me to begin understanding my own impact on my own life, right? So when you think about your life, you're the common denominator in it. And you can't help but be the common denominator in your own life. You don't even have a choice. You are the common denominator in your own life. And so because you're the common denominator in your own life, your impact matters more than anything else that goes on around you, anything else that happens in your lifetime, any experience you might have. Your impact is the key. And so if your impact is wonky, if you don't pay attention to that impact that you're having, it affects your experience. It affects what happens next, right? As I kept questioning, as I kept going through this, it led me to philosophy. Not in a let's pick up a book, let's pick up Nietzsche and start reading Nietzsche. I actually came to those ideas on my own, without any influence of outside text. I came to those things on my own. And I went to AI, ChatGPT, and I tossed these ideas around with ChatGPT, and ChatGPT went, well, that sounds like existentialism. That sounds a little like this and that and the other thing. I suddenly had this framework of thinkers who had come up on these ideas. I knew that my ideas weren't original. I just didn't know where they fit in history. And so suddenly I had a philosophical construct starting to form. My ideas had existential, it had some nihilism in it, it had some other things going on, right? Like I had stuff, right? Absurdism. I had all these ideas. So I used AI to help me sort of sort out my thinking and show me texts, right? I didn't want somebody's interpretation of the text. I wanted the original text. So I started looking into the original texts. I started reading Albert Camus and Kierkegaard and Nietzsche and those kind of guys. And I started, exploring this stuff because it was valid. And what I came to was that their philosophies were all okay. They all ran into the same general problem, which was the idea was the human rules of morality, right, wrong, good, bad. And a very well-intentioned need to try to protect people from harm. And in all of that, it would break their philosophical ideas. It would break them every time. Because to give people sort of an absolute freedom, to give people radical freedom, you can't protect other people. You can't control their choice because by definition, if you're controlling their choice, then they're not radically free. So you have to let people do what they're going to do, which most of these philosophers had a really hard time reconciling. They couldn't let go of the need to control choice as a means of protecting other people. So what I figured out real quick was that if you let go of the idea of needing to protect everybody from everything, and if you just allowed people to have free choice, then their philosophies worked fine. But there was a new problem. Because I couldn't exactly advocate for chaos. I can't advocate for anarchy. So, okay, how does the world really work then? If I'm going to give people absolute freedom, how does the world really work? So my first step in that process was, okay, what if we supported everybody? What if we gave everybody free access to food, clothing, shelter, healthcare, and education? What if we did what we can do, which is take survival completely off the table and not even make it an issue? Everybody's going to have a place to live. Everybody's going to have food to eat, healthcare, education. Everybody's going to have all the things. They're going to have what they need. We're going to kind of layer a little bit of capitalism on the top because we're going to allow people to buy stuff. We're going to give everybody a universal base income. We're going to give everybody kind of money in their pockets. We're going to do all this stuff. Okay, that creates a level playing field. So there's no fight for survival at all anymore. We're taking that completely off the table. Nobody has to worry about where their next meal's coming from or anything like that. So what does that do to it? Well, that helps because a lot of the pain in the world gets created by the the manufactured lack and scarcity that we have in the world by this idea that there is a shortage of some kind that we all need to struggle to fight for the scraps that are left, which isn't really true, but that's the game that we play. That's how the system works. Okay, fine. So if we just take that off and we just change it up entirely and we scrap it, then we get a more of a level playing field. People aren't fighting for survival. Maybe that works a little better. But it was going to keep evolving, and it did. So then I got to cause and effect. If this, then that. Cause and effect at a very simple level just says, if I do X, Y is going to happen. And when you look at it in terms of human behavior, it actually works better than most of the systems of control that we have in place right now, the systems of punishment and so on that we have in place now. It actually works better. Because what it does is it encourages self-responsibility. It encourages the idea that you have to pay attention to your impact on your reality, because if you don't, there's probably going to be things happening that you're not going to like. So here's the thing with artificial punishment. If you can get past the consequence, the artificial punishment, jail, whatever it might be, then you can basically do anything you want. There's nothing really stopping you. If you get past the idea of jail time, there's nothing really stopping you. I wrote an article the other day, and the example that I used was somebody stealing food from the grocery store because presumably they're hungry. In the current system, if you steal from a grocery store, eventually you're going to go to jail. But what does jail offer? 3 meals a day? A warm place to live? That might actually be an okay trade. But if the system worked on simple cause and effect, it would have a different outcome. Because suddenly now the risk is, well, that shop owner might not let me back in the store. If I do that in enough stores enough times, eventually I'm going to have to travel pretty far to get food that I already have trouble getting my hands on. Cause and effect has a much harsher consequence than the artificial system can. Right? Because the suggestion that we just don't feed people in jail doesn't actually solve the problem. That's based on the need for control. That's based on a need for control. Right? And the risk of that is that it slides into an authoritarian system. Right? Because if the idea is people won't listen to the rules, so we're just going to keep making the punishments increasingly more harsh, eventually you slide into authoritarian control. Because you can't not. You can't not. Because that's the only way to maintain control of the population. So cause and effect takes care of all of that for you. So the framework that I built is based on the idea of coherence and integration. It's based on the idea that life actually does make sense. It's mostly based on cause and effect. And you really just have to look at the animals to see how it actually works, because our animal kingdom friends get it. They play by the original rules. When a lion kills a gazelle because it needs dinner, the monkeys don't sit in the trees going, how could you? Right? The lion doesn't get mad at the bear for fishing, right? It doesn't work like that, right? There's a simple sort of functionality that comes from being an animal. We do what we need to do to survive. It's simple cause and effect. I need to eat, so I have to kill this animal in order to do that, right? If killing the animal was some natural absolute law, then everybody would be a vegetarian. killing wouldn't exist. If there was an absolute law in the universe that killing was bad, then everybody would be vegetarian. You wouldn't have a reason. The earth wouldn't even give you a reason to kill anything for food. You would simply just not eat meat. There are so many things that occur in the animal kingdom that humans decided were somehow bad. And they tried to make moral truth out of it, moral absolute law out of it. But it doesn't work. There are loopholes, there are exceptions. It happens anyway. So it doesn't really fix anything. We're not really getting anywhere, right? We're not solving a problem. We're just creating new ones. And I'm not suggesting that we should make it okay to go around killing each other, right? But here's the cause and effect. I'm killing somebody for a reason. I'm doing it for a reason, presumably, right? I have a purpose. So what's the effect of that? Humans decided they didn't like the effect of that, which is totally fine. But then what? And it's the then what that we have a problem with, right? Humans differentiate from animals because we have cause and effect. We have the ability to see the effect of a choice. If I do this, then that's going to happen, and I understand the effect of that choice, which is fine. That's how it should be. That's what humans are meant to do. But that effect, just because I don't like it as a personal preference, because that's all it is, doesn't mean that I should ban it from everybody else for existence. Just because I don't like Brussels sprouts doesn't mean that the store shouldn't sell them, right? Just because I have a preference for something doesn't mean that it should be banished from the entire world forever, right? Every single law and rule that we have in existence in society is based on somebody's preference for how it should be. Every single rule and law we have is based on somebody's preference for how they think the world should be. If it were simple cause and effect, we wouldn't have that. There wouldn't be any rules. You'd be doing what you want. And you would learn through experience what to do and what not to do. And I compare this to childhood. When you're a small child and your parent keeps you in the grocery cart so you don't go run around the parking lot and get hit by a car, it's because you don't have the awareness, enough awareness yet to understand that you probably shouldn't play in traffic. Haven't figured that out yet. Okay, so your parent keeps you safe naturally by keeping you in the shopping cart so that you can't get hurt. Totally fair, totally reasonable with a small child. But we extrapolate that to adults. We take that model and we push it onto adults. So now the adult doesn't have the ability to make their own choice to see what happens. Right? Don't touch the stove, it's hot. Cool, that's great for a 3-year-old. If I want to touch the stove as an adult, then I can, and I get to find out what happens when I do that. And if I don't like the outcome, then I'm probably not going to do it again. There are so many places in life where adults just simply need to learn by doing. And we think we're being kind and compassionate and caring because we're preventing people from having experiences that we don't want them to have. But the problem is they don't get to learn self-responsibility when we do that. They don't get to learn self-responsibility when we do that because we take it away. We say, you don't need to have that experience, so we're going to banish the experience because we don't like the effect. So you're taking away the natural learning that experience is meant to offer. And that natural learning is what creates self-responsibility. It's what creates awareness. It's what allows you to make new choices, to decide to do it differently. Right? The same philosophy we use when we give kids sand tables and water tables to discover and play with is the same philosophy we need to use with adults when we just sort of toss them free and say, figure it out. And why do we say figure it out? Because life is meant to be the teacher. Life is meant to be the teacher. Experience is meant to be the teacher. And you say, but if they're dead, if we're dead, we can't experience. It's still a teacher for the soul. The idea that we should live till we're 98 is a human thing. It's a nice ideal. It's great. Everybody should live for as long as they can. It's brilliant. It's a great ideal. But there's reality. And reality says we die at all different ages, in all different forms, in all different ways, at all different times. And that's as it is. It's not good, it's not bad, it's not right, it's not wrong. It just is. It's just a function of the world. Animals experience the same thing. When the lion eats the gazelle gets an untimely death. And the other gazelles don't mourn it as a moral failure, because it's just part of life. It's part of being hunted. It's part of their lived experience. And humans need to respond in a similar fashion and take a lesson from our animal friends. It doesn't need to be chaos. It doesn't need to be crazy, but it can be. When we teach self-responsibility, it creates authenticity. It creates kindness naturally. You'll actually make choices based on outcomes and not fear. Personal preference would take over. Personal preference isn't a bad thing. That's what creates differences. Differences are okay. Right? Belonging is part of it. Is that idea that in order to belong, we have to be the same. It requires sameness. That's why we have the divide we have in the world right now. It's because we're still looking for sameness. Everybody needs to believe and think the way I believe and think. And if you don't, then I'm going to ban you and block you. Yep. Right? And the opposite is a moral failure. It's a how could you? There's a reason. None of it's a failure. All of it is a function of how the world is right now. All of it. All of it is a function of how the world is, and that morality has gotten into politics. If we actually lived in a world based on acceptance, we'd leave each other alone. If we did acceptance the way it was meant to be done, we'd leave each other alone. If we fully accepted each other as we are, those differing beliefs wouldn't matter. wouldn't matter. Acceptance just means you're okay. Belonging creates permission. Am I allowed to be this way? Because if I want to belong in the group, then I can't do certain things. So that's permission. Because the risk to me is that I won't belong anymore. And humans are social creatures. That's just who we are, right? We're all social creatures. We want to be around other people. We naturally gravitate to living in groups. We create our own families, all of that kind of stuff. We're social creatures. That's cool. But it's how we bounce off of each other that matters. It's what we do with that. So I came up with this construct called the relational loop theory. Each individual comes in with their own chain of cause and effect. If this, then that. So you come in with your chain of cause and effect. I come in with my chain of cause and effect. And then it's kind of like a Venn diagram because it sort of does that. And you end up with a third chain of cause and effect because of the way those two people are interacting with each other and the way their choices affect each other. So you end up with an entirely separate third chain. So I call it relational loop theory because essentially what it means is it's a never-ending chain of cause and effect. Each cause creates an effect, and each effect becomes a new cause. In spirituality, we kind of talk about the idea that you have a limited perception as a human being. You can't know everything. And here's the truth, you don't want to. Because if you saw the cause and effect chain of every single decision that you made in a day, you wouldn't even get out of bed in the morning. The number of cause and effect chains that are available through you just simply putting dinner on the table is enormous. If you actually realize the complexity of the cause and effect chain that occurs for food to get into your house and for you to put it on the table for your family to eat, you wouldn't even get out of bed. You don't want to know the complexity of all of that and the entirety of all those chains. So the only thing you see is a very limited cause and effect chain of your own impact. And yes, when you bump into somebody and they give you an effect, it creates a new cause for you. And some of those effects you don't ask for, right? You're like, I didn't want this. I didn't ask for this. What's this nonsense? And that's okay. It creates a new cause, a new place for you to make a new choice, a new place for you to decide how the effect is going to affect you. How is that experience going to affect you? What am I going to do with this experience in my reality? How am I going to allow this in my life? What am I going to do next? That's cause and effect. And when you place a story over it, like a blanket, like morality or right and wrong, good and bad, you make it worse for yourself. Every time. You make it worse. The experience is just a thing. How you see it, the story you tell about it, how you feel about it, what you do with it, all of that is under your control. Because unlike an animal, you have that rational, logical thought thing going on. And you can decide how to feel and think about what happens. If you simply allow the original emotion that comes up from any experience to flow through, unencumbered without story, it would move very quickly through you. And then you would be able to get back to rational, logical thought. And you would be able to interpret that experience in a way that didn't cause additional pain. And if you did that, life would be a lot easier and you wouldn't have a pile of problems in the corner because you wouldn't be stockpiling bad experiences for yourself. This framework is still growing, and it'll continue to grow, and I'll continue to expand it into other areas of life. Right now, it's sort of the very basic relationships that we have with each other. Simple cause and effect kind of chains. What happens in the home? What happens when somebody leaves their laundry on the floor? That kind of stuff. Really basic, really simple cause and effect sort of chains. I've expanded it to include a real world life, right? Things going on out there in the world, but it will continue to expand. And I invite you to hang out. We're going to do some regular lives. I'm going to keep talking about things. We're going to keep talking about the philosophy of integration and what it means, and how it exists in the world, and what it means for our interpretation of experience, and why humans have that so bungled, and why it causes so much pain. So thanks very much for joining me, folks, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye for now.